everybody. It is Zoe Hoffman with Zoe Hoffman Tutoring, and I'm coming at you live today, like I do some Fridays, to talk about some things that we care about here at Zoe Hoffman Tutoring. So welcome, and I hope you're having a great August. I know a lot of kiddos are back at school, and the ones who are not will probably be going back shortly. So as we gear up for that or get into that, I hope everybody's doing okay. I know it can be a really stressful time for everyone. So today, as we go back to school, a lot of students start to think about test scores. Schools are usually giving beginning of the year assessments and tests to figure out where kiddos stand or even how they've improved from last year. As well as we always have those dreaded state tests that we take at the end of the year. So I want to tell you a little bit about why we don't care as much about test scores as you might think that we do as a tutoring company. And test scores are one of those really tricky things because obviously sometimes we need to get test scores in order to do the things that we want, such as the SAT, the ACT, promotion exams, and end of course exams sometimes can prevent students from going on to the classes that they would like to go on to. But overall, we care a little bit less about test scores, and I'm going to tell you some of the reasons why. And this may convince you to care a little bit less about test scores as well. The first thing is test scores can sometimes not give the whole picture of what's really going on. So especially those end of the year state tests can sometimes be written in a way that doesn't really connect with your child, and so they don't understand the questions and therefore they can't show everything that they know. So that score on the paper is not really showing exactly where your child is and how much they learned this year. Your child may have worked really hard and they may just not be a very good test taker. And so that's, test taking skills are only a very small life skill to have. And so your child may just not be a test taker and therefore their scores may not reflect everything that they know. And another part of it not being the full picture is that the stress that's created by the testing environment or even just being given a test in general can sometimes really affect the way that your child does on the test. So there are studies that have shown that when we get stressed in a testing situation or even trying to, recall math facts on demand or timed tests and things like that, our brain actually can go into fight or flight mode. And so when our brain goes into fight or flight mode, it can block our working memory. And so when your working memory is blocked, it's really hard for you to show everything that you know. So that stress can actually affect the test scores, and it can keep the test scores from showing exactly where a student is. And so it's not as reliable. It's not 100%. A lot of factors go into what that score is. Your child could take a test on one day and then take it again a few days later and could get completely different scores due to the things that were going on those different days. Breakfast, stomach ache, things going on at home, not getting enough sleep. These are all things that affect those test scores. We do care about test scores in the fact that sometimes when very good assessments are given and ongoing assessments are given, they can give teachers and tutors like us a place to start with your child. So it can tell teachers and tutors where your child might need some assistance. Maybe they're missing consistently certain types of questions, or maybe their reading fluency isn't coming off as it should. And it gives us a place that we know that we can work with them. And again, these types of assessments are usually used for instruction. So we would call those formative assessments. And those kind of just show us where we need to work with kids. And a lot of times these are diagnostic, and that way we can kind of have a list of things that we know that your child needs to work on, and we can also measure their improvement. So not all assessments are bad. We need assessments so that we know how students are progressing. And that brings me to my next point, which is we care a lot more about growth. And so again and again, you may hear me say with Zoe Hoffman Tutoring, it's all about growth for us. So your child, if they come to us and they're, performing in a certain way on certain things, and then they start to improve, we are very excited about that because that shows that they're learning and growing, and that shows that they're getting towards their goal. Sometimes we can get too caught up in, as educators, that a student is not at the appropriate grade level scoring for an assessment. But if they started out really low or just kind of behind, which is not a bad thing because all kids, they develop at different times. And really, it's kind of weird that we expect all kids to go through this path and always measure up in the same way when, developmentally, they may not be ready for certain material. So if they started out here and they got here, we're happy because they are learning and growing. And we are, helping them to continue to grow towards those goals. But if they started out here and now they're here, but the school wants them to be here, because this is considered grade level, that can get really stressful. And so we encourage our students and we encourage their parents, if we're seeing growth, that's a good thing. We can't just expect them to jump from here to here in a few months. It's not attainable. As some students can do that, and sometimes it has something to do with the development, and they become ready for that material and they really take off. But as long as we're seeing growth, that makes us really happy. The last thing is, we don't want to be another adult that's stressing your kids out about scores. Their teachers are very awesome, and I know all the teachers that I know don't stress their kids out about scores. But the way that our testing system is set up, kids are stressing out about scores because they either feel like if they don't score a certain way, that people are going to judge them, or that they're going to get held back and not be allowed to go to the next grade. It can get really stressful for students when they're constantly kind of trying to measure up when given these assessments. And so we don't want to be another adult in their life that's, stressing them out about, trying to improve that score. If your child, needs to improve those scores, then we will be able to do things to help them improve and grow upon their own performance. And then also, as kind of to counteract that, and to not be another adult that's stressing your child out about scores, we help your child realize that they have the ability to grow and change and build their brain. And so if they are improving upon their own performance, they can really feel good about themselves. So instead of looking just at that number on the paper or just at that letter on the paper, they can really look inside and say, did I learn and grow? Have I improved? And in a lot of cases, students can see that growth for themselves, even if it's not becoming apparent in grades or external factors. They can see, I got a C on that test, and then I got a C plus on the next test, and I got a B on the next test, and I've learned how to do this skill that I didn't know how to do at all. And so we try to help students really grasp that growth mindset, which can really help with things like testing anxiety that we were talking about earlier that can affect test scores. So a lot of times when students kind of start to not stress as much about tests, their scores actually improve, which is funny. But it's just true because they're not getting that fight or flight response in their brain. They're feeling like, okay, I'm just going to try to improve upon what I've been able to do so far. And they're not as worried about, like, oh my gosh, is my teacher going to be upset with me? And what about my tutor? And what about my parents? Because they know, they have it in their control to improve and grow. And that doesn't always have everything to do with test scores. So I hope you're having a wonderful August. I know that I am, as I watch my students go back to school, and as me and my tutors start to work with more students as we go into the fall semester. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions or leave comments if you don't agree with our views on testing. I would love to hear why, or if you have any testing concerns. Or about assessments or grades or scores. I would love to chat with you about that in the comments or on the phone if you need. So please leave your opinions and questions in the comments and have a wonderful Friday.